I just want to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territories of the First Nations and Native American peoples. Here where I am in Vancouver, these peoples are the Musqueam, Stolo, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. But I know where many of you are, you're on the land of other nations. Always, but especially during this time, let us remember our connection to our sisters and brothers in these nations and pray for the day in which we might be with them in right relationship. Welcome. Welcome to Living Interfaith. Know that the whole of you is welcome. You're not asked to leave who you are in your own home. Please bring who you are in with you into this community today. But what you are asked to remember is that the others in this room have brought who they are into this community as well. And all of goodwill are welcome. Bruce and Cheryl, would you like to do our opening song?
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again,
Thank you so much. Let us come into silence. Good and gracious God, who loves and delights in all people, we stand in awe before you, knowing that the spark of life within each person on earth is the spark of your divine life. Differences among cultures and races are multicolored manifestations of your light. May our hearts and minds be open to celebrate similarities and differences among our sisters and brothers. We place our hopes for racial harmony and equality in our committed action and in your presence in our neighbor. May all peoples live in peace. Amen. And the Sisters of Mercy. Just before we get into it too much, we have some announcements. All of these things will take place online, as always. This afternoon, as I just mentioned, some of us are going to be doing part 1 of an introductory compassionate listening workshop. It'll be from 1 to 4, and it's all about connecting with other people, learning how to really listen to them and find our common humanity. So anyone who's interested, just write to me in the chat box if you'd like to join us. That would be really fun. Starting tonight, Dr. Hassan Walaji is going to be speaking from the Shia Muslim community about the events in Karbala and the lasting significance of Imam Hussein as the icon of universal social justice. If you're interested, you'll be able to watch the 6 parts of his series. They'll be going every evening this week, starting from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it'll be late for those of us on the West Coast. They'll be on YouTube. I'm quickly going to put the link in the chat, so if anyone wants to watch those. And one day we will hopefully be able to meet the filmmaker, who is a Christian minister who traveled to Karbala and did the pilgrimage that the Shia Muslims do there every year. And it's really a fantastic story. and just seeing how Imam Hussein has just had such an impact in the Muslim community. So you'd be able to watch that in the evenings over the next 6 days there. And then finally, Sadiqa Jessa, who many of you know, she and I are going to be co-teaching a training tomorrow with the Muslim Food Bank. I'm going to put the Zoom information right there. That'll be tomorrow from 10 to 12:30. And it's going to be on exploring the emotions behind racial inequality. So we did one of those trainings already back in June. Went very well. We had about 40 folks from the Muslim community, and it was very interesting. And it's important to have these discussions, not just in primarily white circles, but also in all different kinds of groups. So I was very happy we had that. And so they invited us to do this one tomorrow, but it's open to everybody and it's free. So that's the login information. You can join if you'd like. And finally, this Tuesday, Sukhvinder Kaur is going to be leading our monthly Interfaith meditation session. It'll be on Tuesday from 7 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can find, I don't want to go looking for it right now, but you can find the login information for that on our website. And it's also in the MailChimp email I send out. And I don't know which kind of meditation she's going to do this time, but they're always quite lovely. So if you can join, that would be great. Okay, thank you so much. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share? Okay, thank you. The hurt of one is the hurt of all. The honor of one is the honor of all. From Chief Dan George. And now if you'll join me in a passing of the peace. I can't unmute anybody, but if you're able to unmute yourself, now if we just take turns saying something like peace be with you as well. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. Peace, everyone. So great to see you this morning.
Peace, everybody.
Peace be with you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Peace be with you.
Walaikum assalam.
Can you make us big?
Peace be with you.
Paz a todos. Peace be with you all from both of us.
From both of us.
From Invermere.
Can you make Mama big?
Peace to everyone.
Can you make them big? Can you make...
Peace, everybody. Thank you so much. Zoom is always fun at home. Now, Bruce and Cheryl.
Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Shanti. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti. Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti. Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, if you'll join me in our joint affirmation. We come together in peace. We sing together in joy and with love. We worship together in one house, a house with names beyond number. Our paths are many, our beliefs are as leaves, and the tree that we cleave to is nourished by the light of compassion, justice, and mutual respect. May our lives, our beliefs, and our actions help to bring about the world of love we all seek, and let it begin here. Now we're just going to take a few moments to pray in our own homes and in our own ways. There are so many things we can be praying about at this time. I think if we could focus on compassion today, I think the world could really use that, and all of us could use some more compassion. I have a friend, a Muslim friend in India, who said that he spent the last 5 years trying to just build up as much compassion in himself for others as he can. And he just feels like he doesn't even know how to sustain that right now, with our world being so divided. So if we could all kind of focus on that and think about sending that out to those who want to live in compassion but who are struggling. Thank you. Thank you.
To you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Thank you so much. So in 2008, I met a rabbi who suggested I go to the Middle East with the Compassionate Listening Project if I wanted to learn more about the Israel-Palestine conflict and if I were serious about pursuing a career in international peacemaking. So I did. Leading up to the trip, I began studying everything I could about the history of the conflict. I read several books, talked to the Jews and Muslims in my life about their views on the situation, and even began studying Arabic in the evening at Rutgers University so I'd be able to be more conversant with some of the non-English speakers on our travels. I learned a lot, and I really loved it. But many of the folks around me did not. Several of my work colleagues started making comments about me and my newfound interests. They wanted to know if I was going to start wearing a burqa now that I was studying Arabic, and when exactly I'd, quote, become a terrorist. My immediate supervisor at my job, whom I considered to be a close friend, and I used to have to fly around a lot for our job, and he told me he'd no longer sit next to me on the plane because he knew I was going to get flagged for suspicious activity. He advised me to leave my Arabic textbook at home on our travels. The day I returned to work after my first compassionate listening delegation, the HR director of our company asked me if I'd brought a gun to work with me that day. He said he was scared of me now, since I was, quote, hanging out with the terrorists. Never mind that our group that year was mostly Jewish, and we were there to teach compassionate listening and set up dialogue circles between Israelis and Palestinians, to say nothing of me being a lifelong pacifist. I ended up leaving that company for some reason, and I moved to Seattle 6 months later to work for the Compassionate Listening Project full-time. While there and at various other nonprofits over the next 10 years, I worked a lot with Jews and Muslims. And I was called a terrorist and asked if I was a terrorist more times than I can remember, including by my friends and even a few family members. And even more so after I chose to marry Samir, a Muslim man, even though he's from India and had absolutely nothing to do with my work in the Middle East. After the US election in 2016 and the sharp rise in anti-Muslim hate crimes in the US leading up to the infamous Muslim travel ban, I wrote an article on the Medium website about my experiences with Islamophobia as a non-Muslim who's in Muslim circles. It was about what I'd witnessed and what had been said and done to me and the Muslims around me, both the physically violent actions and the microaggressions. The article got some traction, but the responses were mixed. Several people were very emotionally supportive. Many non-Muslims were surprised. They hadn't realized just how much abuse was directed at the Muslim community. But two things really stood out to me. The first is that a great many Muslims thanked me for writing the article because that what I'd written was true, but non-Muslims would only listen to it because it was coming from me and I was not Muslim. The people who really hated Muslims would never listen to a Muslim talk about these things. They would only listen to the other people who looked and worshiped like them. The second thing was that when some of the aforementioned friends and coworkers and family members found out about the article, they were livid. Even though all the stories I'd written were anonymous and could never be linked back to them personally, they were outraged that I'd exposed their behavior. Instead of apologizing, or reaching out to connect and discuss the situation more, or even tell me where they were coming from, many of them cut me off completely. Some of them still don't talk to me. I thought this was sad and troubling and somewhat ironic, given that the whole reason I'd gone into this work was to try to heal relationships and bring people closer together. So I wanted to tell you all of this now, because I think some of the same dynamics and lessons are present in a lot of anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism, the same as they are in Islamophobia, which is, of course, its own kind of racism. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I also wanted to use this example because I know many people who are actually quite supportive of the Muslim community and who would think nothing of there being a sermon in a church or in a synagogue or whatever in support of Muslims. But when you mention racism or anti-racism about the Black community or the Indigenous community, they suddenly think the issue is too divisive and too political and not worth discussing. And I find that very worrisome. So today we want to talk about anti-racism. So if you look up the definition of anti-racism, it's the active process of identifying and eliminating racism by changing systems, organizational structures, policies and practices and attitudes so that power is redistributed and shared equitably. I think that sounds pretty good. I think that makes a lot of sense to see that some people have more power than others, that some people are given more space and more room to speak in certain situations than others, and that if we want to have a just and compassionate community, we want to figure out how to make this more equitable, seeing that there's a system that's set up in this way, and that those of us who benefit from this system don't even realize the kind of benefits we have because we're not listening to people who come from different experiences. So that's really what I've been trying to learn more about over the last several months, is what are the ways in which my own background prevents me from seeing things from different perspectives. So, and I think that that's very much in alignment with what we're trying to do here. So a few months ago, I started an anti-racism book club, which was funny because immediately after starting it, I saw there was another Medium article about why is it that white people start book clubs, but they're not actually, they want to read about these things and learn about them intellectually. They don't actually want to do things on the ground. And I thought that was a really important thing to notice. But also I think that work to be in solidarity with the Black and Indigenous community has to come in many different levels. And so I was actually speaking to Lauren, it's either Lauren who's with us or Peter, about this a few days ago. And she was saying that anti-racism kind of operates, there are like 3 aspects of it. And you have to be aware of all the different aspects, but the kind of work you do might come in at different levels at different times. There's the fact that the way systemic racism is set up in our society directly harms Black people and Indigenous people in a very tangible way. And that's sort of level 1. Level 2 is that the reason it's set up that way is that it benefits people who are not Black and Indigenous, especially those of us who are white, like myself. And that is another aspect of it, the fact that some of us are benefiting from these systems. And then level 3 is that actually by having this be inequitable, that means that it's hurting all of us, even those of us who are white and those who benefit, and in many different ways, because we may not have Black or Indigenous people in our circle of friends. We may not be hearing from them. I realize I've been in school forever, much to the chagrin of my long-suffering husband, and I've never had a Black professor, which is absolutely ridiculous, and which is my own fault, because I should have taken classes with Black professors, but I haven't. And part of the reason why I haven't is I think I've only ever had one option to in the courses I've gone into. That's a problem. There's a problem there. I don't think there's a single Black child at our kids' school, even though there are lots of non-white people. It's actually primarily non-white, but I don't think there's a single Black child there. So even if at home we're reading stories to the kids about how all the races are equal and how we're all together, why is it when they go to school, they're not going to hear anything from a Black teacher? They're not going to get to hang out with Black students at that school, where they're missing out on those experiences. I started this community about 2 years ago, and I love it, and it's wonderful. And we rarely have any Black members, and we don't have anyone who's Black on our board. We have one person who's Indigenous, and she usually doesn't come, unfortunately, because she has a bunch of other things. It's Mary Fontaine, but that's on me. This is an organization that I started. So what is it about the way that I set it up that it's not equitable? So the kind of work that we want to do that's why I see anti-racism as being in alignment with our work here at the sanctuary, which is all about, okay, how can we all come in, be on the same level? We're all going to take turns. We're going to listen to each other. I want everyone to feel loved and respected and included. And even in setting that up, I haven't done that in a way that has made it accessible for Black people. So that's on me. How can I do that? And the Black friends I have, I don't want to be a pest and sort of be like, hey, you have to come, so that then it looks like we have more representation, so that then the optics look good. What is it about the way that I set this up? So I've been thinking about these things and trying to learn about these things and noticing where in our life, where is there diversity, where is there not diversity, who is included. When I was making these PowerPoint presentations this weekend for the training, the pictures, when I would search for like couple holding hands or people in a group, Why is it all the pictures of yoga are of white people doing yoga? I'm a white person who does yoga. I love that, but white people didn't invent yoga. So what does it mean that those are all the pictures? And what would it mean if in doing the presentation, those are the kind of pictures I'd use? What kind of message does that send? In our compassionate listening group, there are about 40 of us facilitators, and we didn't have any facilitators until maybe 2 years ago who were Black. And we're just now starting to get more. And we're having a good discussion about what does it mean that we, again, the exact same thing. We say that everybody's included. We say that it's open. We want everyone to be welcome. And yet almost all the people here are white. Why is that? What are we doing? So there's the on the ground work that we want to do, right? We all have our spheres of influence. What can we do in our spheres of influence to reach out and to listen to the stories that we've been missing? Just like we do here at the sanctuary, where you may not get to meet a lot of Zoroastrians. I know I don't. So we make sure that we include them, and we make sure that we include Taoists and Jains in a way that we might not otherwise. So just like we do that here in our religious community and in our spiritual practice, how can we do that in our life so that it's actually equitable? And so that's the on the ground stuff that I've been thinking about a lot. But then there's the internal work, because then another part of my own spiritual practice has to do with non-dualism. And I want to take pains not to just say, well, all the bad people are out there and they're not like me. So it's all those other people who are racist. It's all those other people who are ignorant and who say hurtful things and who walk around just clueless about the world. Unlike me, I'm so advanced. I know these things. I know everything I need to know. And I couldn't possibly be racist. I couldn't possibly be ignorant. I couldn't possibly be hurtful. And that's very false, I'm sorry to say. So that's where I think the inner work is what's so important. And kind of like how, okay, you have a book club, but you also have to do things. Okay, we want to look in our communities and see how we can make them more inclusive, but also in ourselves. How can we look at how we hold things? What kind of attitudes do we have? I remember a few years ago, in coming back to the Islamophobia thing, I told a friend that Samir and I were arguing about chores or something. And she said, oh, well, yes, you're arguing about chores because Muslim men, they wouldn't share the chores with their wives. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Yes, because all the white friends I have who are married to white men never argue over chores. That isn't at all a thing in that kind of relationship. And but that kind of belief, and I think that's what happens, right? She didn't mean it. She's not racist. She's very loving, and she's friends with Samir as well. But we can absorb these kind of messages from the material around us and then say things. And I've certainly done that. And then woken up at 4 a.m. for years and thought about the ridiculous, stupid, racist things I've said without even thinking about it. The time I said to a Black friend, oh, it's okay, here at this party, we can totally have wine in mugs because it's okay, I don't mind being ghetto like that. Because I'm so not racist and I'm so advanced. And then telling another Black friend, oh, you know, we were traveling in India and I saw these white people with dreads. You know, I wanted to wash my hair. I didn't want it to get like that. Oh my God, why am I such an idiot? And now you know the things I'll think about, you know, for the rest of my life. And be like, oh, why would I say that? But we all say these things. And the society, you know, we sort of absorb messages, even if we don't mean to. One of the most helpful things I've read over the last few months was this analogy of it's like we're in a leaky boat. So if you have this canoe and it's kind of like racism and discriminatory languages and beliefs are like the water. And it isn't that you actively put the water in your own boat because you want to be hateful. It's that the water like comes up around and spills in and you don't even notice it. You're just like rowing along and you look down and suddenly you have all this water in the boat. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't even think I had that. I gotta actively bail it out. I have to actively look around in myself and see what is in here and what messages am I putting out there and how can I bail this out so that I actually am the way I want to be. So I believe that all of us here in this community really do love people and don't want to be racist and want to be open and loving and hopeful people. And I think we all are in many ways. And I think I would, I assume you're like me and you also make mistakes. And I think you're like all of us and you absorb messages that are unhelpful. Even right now, we're reading Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. And he says when he first started, he had some beliefs about, oh, well, why is it that, there aren't the same Black scholars who've studied these things? And then over time, he was like, wait a minute. No, even I've absorbed that as a Black man, as a Black scholar, this idea that Black people won't go into academia, they won't focus on these kind of things, that they're not smart enough or advanced enough. It's a ridiculous thing that even folks in the Black community, even the preeminent scholar on anti-Black racism, says he absorbed those things too. And it's all about how do we bail them out of the boat. And so I think that that's an important thing for all of us to do, especially those of us here in the community who want to be loving, who want to be compassionate and open, and to notice who isn't around us. Who are we pushing away, maybe without even realizing it? And then in ourselves, when we find ourselves saying ridiculous things or shutting down or having a knee-jerk reaction, to really sit with that. It's a Buddhist thing about don't just do something, sit there. But sometimes that's really what we have to do, and sit with that discomfort and really think about that and know that it's okay. I don't want this to be a self-flagellating kind of sermon, but also we want to do better. We really do. So I think it was Maya Angelou who said, when you know better, you do better. So we have to learn, how can we do better for each other, for the sake of being loving, for the sake of helping, not for the sake of being politically correct, but for the sake of actively being in community with the people around us. And I just want to close with a message from Representative John Lewis, who sadly just passed away. It's this beautiful message he left. He says, anchor the eternity of love in your own soul and embed this planet with goodness. Lean toward the whispers of your own heart. Discover the universal truth and follow its dictates. Release the need to hate, to harbor division and the enticement of revenge. Release all bitterness. Hold only love, only peace in your heart, knowing that the battle of good to overcome evil is already won. Choose confrontation wisely, but when it's your time, don't be afraid to stand up, and speak out against injustice. And if you follow your truth down the road to peace and the affirmation of love, if you shine like a beacon for all to see, then the poetry of all the great dreamers and philosophers is yours to manifest in a nation, a world community, and a beloved community that is finally at peace with itself. Thank you all so much. Let's just take a moment of silence. When you're ready, Bruce and Cheryl.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in our heart, I do believe that we overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bruce and Cheryl. Let us go now in love, in peace, in real sisterhood and brotherhood. And let us go oppose oppression and racism wherever we find it. Amen. Thank you.